Kann ich? Hello, hello, hello. Buonasera a tutti. I think now we can start saying good evening or good afternoon. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? Thank you. Have you all downloaded the WeAreDeveloper app? Louder? Okay. I don't want to make you scream too much, otherwise you're not going to lose your voice from saying yeah. But you are going to use the WeAreDeveloper app to ask a question. Our next panel is, it's a talk, but it's sort of a panel because there are going to be two people on stage. It's, I think, a very interesting one, especially for WeDeveloper, because it is about let developer develop again. Because we as a developer, even if it doesn't seem, I am a web developer myself, I am a web engineer myself, but oftentimes we get stuck on developing code for ticketing system, for software that does not give us the fun, or the company is building a software that is not like what we want to do, or the feature that we'd like to create. And then we have to adapt, of course, because this is what the boss says we want to do. But Kai Geiselhardt and Volker Zöpfel are going to give us a talk about how we can find again the Freude, the happiness in development. I leave you both the stage.
Thank you.
A big round of applause, everybody.
Stage is yours.
Oh, wow. This was not suspected, okay? Wait a sec.
Ah, es funktioniert schon.
Is this going? No, no, no. Wait a sec when I'm starting it.
Nearly.
Top left. Top left corner, where?
Einfach
Where's the presenter view? Ah, here. Ah, magic. No?
Wenn die Präsentation gestartet ist, geht oben rechts, das dritte von links, ein Knopf, damit kannst du tauschen.
Okay.
hier.
Ja, warte.
Ja, Extend Desktop.
Genau.
Ah, nearly.
Oh, we'll get better, we can do it.
Wir haben es alle gesehen.
Okay, dann geht Switch.
Wir kommen kurz hoch.
Warte, und jetzt können wir Switch.
Jetzt gibt es
Hier da oben.
Guck mal da oben. Du musst da nach drehen.
Wo denn?
Er ist hier nicht.
Dann links.
Nee, das ist hier nicht.
I can do it. Ah! Oh man, goosebumps, I'm a bit nervous. So, hello everybody and welcome to our session, Let Developers Develop Again, or as an alternative title, Make Development Great Again, yay! So in detail, we're gonna give you some details about how we brought back fun, speed and efficiency into an enterprise hell and for development. But first of all, I'd say, let us introduce ourselves properly, and I'd say, age before beauty.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Volker Zöpfel. I'm 52 years old, married, have 2 kids, and I started development 1984, so really a long time ago, and I started web development, so building internet applications in 1995, so really long time ago. Please, Kai, introduce yourself.
Thank you. So I'm a guy who is not capable of swapping screens. My name is Kai. I'm close to 29 years old, 11th time. Sorry. I'm studied business informatics. I'm having 20 years of experience as a software engineer. I'm married, having 2 kids, and I was born and bred into the dark ages of JEE, enterprise web application servers, and so on and so forth. So the next question is, who do we work for? We are working for the Schwarz Group. I suspect you all know Lidl, Kaufland. Anybody here who don't know them? No, I didn't hear you. Okay, so these are the numbers. We have nearly 14,000 stores. We have 500,000 employees worldwide. We have a great revenue a year, and we are the fourth biggest retailer in the world, right behind Walmart, Costco, and Amazon. So, to enter our topic, we first have to do a small recap of the so-called way of development. How things were done in the past, how we're doing actual things in the present, and what is enterprise doing out of it. So, and please, Grandpa, tell us a story.
Okay, so here's the old man standing in front of you, telling you about good old days. So, what was the old days when I started programming back in 1984? Everything was slow, yeah. So you had a computer with a processor that was capable to do one thing at a time, very slow. You were limited for the amount of RAM that you can use. You were limited for the amount of disk space you can use if you have a disk. And these limited capabilities limit your options, but you were never overwhelmed. That's the good part. If you wanted to update something, you didn't send an email or send a link. You just put your disk in an envelope, go to the post office, and send it to the post to your customer. And then he said, has this update. This was the time. So these limited options were certainly boring, but the good part was you were never overwhelmed by these options that you have, which means no internet, nobody blames you that you use BASIC or something like this. Yeah, that was the good part. How is it today, Kai?
Good question. I mean, nowadays, the developer has to act as, in German it's said, Eierling die Wollmilchsau. In English, it's the jack of all trades. I mean, the developer has to take care of a lot of things these days. I mean, a whole lot of different programming languages, a lot of technologies, SaaS, PaaS, the cloud, containerization, not just speaking of the processes within the enterprises, the complete ITIL hell, and so on and so forth. And I think, or we think, all of this leads to some kind of symptom, which is called the New Age hipsterism. So when someone is following every sound that is driven through a village, and every time has to stick to the very newest language, the newest library version, and so on, they could sometimes get lost in space, we have the feeling. Yeah, speaking of space.
Okay, then let's talk about the enterprise. Yeah, that's the enterprise, how enterprise wants to look like. Yeah, spacey, fine, totally tech. The reality looks a little bit different. To be honest, it looks more or less like this. This is how everybody expects enterprise to be. Enterprise has a very bad reputation, and the reason is just, well, it's true. Yeah, the enterprise is slow. Why does it look like this, and why is it so slow, and why is it so disturbing and annoying? Enterprise is usually silos. Yeah, so you have the development department, the infrastructure department, all the other departments, and everybody's working inside this small little silo. And if you work together or want to work together and bring a product to life, well, then you're limited to do some processes. Yeah, and as a developer, what's happening is you spend most of the times in meetings, writing tickets, following the process. If you want, do planning meetings. Well, yeah, that's exciting. You do a waterfall meeting for the next 3 months, and the next week it's just shit what you just designed and what you planned. And certainly, if you're really bad, you're there in some kind of escalation meetings. So this is something that you don't want and distracts you completely from the development process and from the things you really love to do, because usually you don't want to do processes. So, Kai.
Yes, so a real challenge was given to us. It wasn't exactly the building of the Tower of Babel. I mean, all of you hopefully know the story, where people try to build a tower that reaches high to heaven, where they could touch God, and God thinks, you tiny little peasants, I'm going to punish you with a whole lot of different languages, so you will not be able to finish the project. And a naughty person who thinks maybe of past and maybe ongoing projects who were failing due to different languages or on the brink of failure due to that. So no, but the real challenge was that we had to move our Lidl online shop within 2 years for the first country into a cloud-native environment. And like Volker said, the whole thing were completely residing within an on-prem environment. Sometimes we were lucky to have Docker at hand. We were working in a hybrid environment. It was not really cloud native. It was somewhat cloud ready, but not even that. And the starting point for everything was that we had a whole lot of different teams who were responsible for the whole online shop. We had a release-driven approach, which means we had a handful of releases a year, so which is not really the things how meant to being delivered in a cloud-native environment, because normally you're talking about continuous delivery, continuous deployment, so where hopefully every commit results in some kind of active, productive release or deployment. And there was no real knowledge about cloud nativeness. I mean, everybody was somehow talking about, yeah, my app is cloud ready and so on and so forth, but it was not really capable of being deployed within seconds to the cloud. And this is where we then had to find some kind of solution for that. And this is where the enterprise architecture within our company decided, okay, we have to start an active solution journey for that. And because Volker was attending the solution the whole time, I think he's the best one who can explain what they were journeying during that time.
Okay, so if you just have 2 years to bring a whole online shop, one really big one, into the cloud, in a cloud-native environment, the first thing you need to do is certainly think about, this is not a sprint, yeah? So it's a journey. And this journey is a challenge because 2 years is a very short amount of time. And the first thing you need to get away, or that you need to improve, is speed. Yeah? Because if you want to do this, you need fast iterations. You need to get rid of all things that slows you down. And at the end, we just figured out a few problems that we need to solve, and the challenge, before we get into it. So one of the things was, we just need to have a common understanding what we really, as a company, want to reach. So we call this the one direction. And so how we did it, we just did workshops, bring everybody together, and everybody can contribute. And after we just made this, we just aligned to these things behind me and these topics, and everybody was there and committed that we want to do that, yeah, and to reach that, and this helps us to get speed. The next thing that we figured out was we have a communication problem. So everybody is talking about the same stuff, using the same words, but it's not the same. If everybody is talking about service, this does not mean that when I talk to service about service and he's talking about the service, that we mean the same thing. And what we came up with some kind of glossary and a common language. And we said, well, this is our model. And if we're talking about a service, we mean exactly this thing, yeah? And if we talk about a component or a dependency, we mean exactly that. And so that really helps us to develop the things in the right direction. The next thing that we need to get rid of, certainly, was the silos, because really, nobody wants to do this process stuff and the meeting stuff. And silos, just the opposite of project organization. So what we needed and what we did, we changed the whole company, not the whole, but we started first of all, to switch to a project-driven organization. So all the people from the silos were just put out into one project team and on a lot of project teams. So not infrastructure, operation, developers, and our business. Everybody was then in one product team and has his product that he was responsible for. And this is still not enough, because if you have now all these things get away and you have a cool idea that you really want to achieve, well, the next thing, if you have a cool idea, is the boring stuff, yeah? So setting up the infrastructure, the CI/CD pipeline, all these kind of things that you don't want to do, because all these things are just prevents that you start finishing your idea. And what we then did is we said, well, we need to automate all this kind of stuff. And we call this the one developer journey. And this automation was at the end, when we counted, capable to do 120 steps for the developers. Because these 120 steps was between idea and production grade deployment. And in the end, it was 160 steps that we figured out. And what we really achieved was at the end that we shrink down the time from 90 days when we started to get things from idea to production grade to 1 day. So now, with this one developer journey that we provide all this automation stuff for you, it was possible that you wake up, have a cool idea, convince someone, and at the end of the day, you have your Hello World application and everything you need up in production and up and running. But a lot of talking, let's just show something.
No,
that's very
not yet.
important. No, yeah, just I really wanted to say one more thing, and that's it, yeah, there's one more slide. This gives you an impression about all the tools, and really there are a lot of logos not missing here, but that we automate. So you see, it's really a lot of stuff that we already automate on this journey. And now, it's showtime. Maybe, Kai?
Exactly. Enough of the esoterical bubbling. Let's show you some moving parts about how we were able to fulfill these type of requirements. So for that, let me switch to mirroring. I can do it, I know it. Boom. So, perfect. Welcome to the ODJ. So this is mainly our UI, and from there on, you can enter the one developer journey after a successful login, of course.
Or not. Let's see.
I can remember it. So give it a shot, Zach. So when someone enters the ODJ and wants to do something with it, the customer first has to create a so-called subscription. The subscription is our top-level organizational element. Underneath everything belonging to a context will be bundled in. And there you have a single person responsibility. Normally the one who creates a subscription will be entered there automatically, and you have to give in some kind of billing reference element. So this is only for billing purposes with us internally. And underneath the subscription, you can create one or multiple products, and every product will be then built with this billing element internally with us. So for our purposes, we already created some kind of subscription for the conference, because the subscription creation can take up to 1 or 3 hours, because we are bound to our internal identity and access management, and all the roles have to be set up internally, and this could take quite some time. That's why we created that upfront. And here you can see when we enter the subscription, we can at least see some kind of team management. So here we can maintain the whole team who is responsible for working on that subscription and all of its belonging products. We differentiate between different types of roles. We have 2 roles at the moment. The super admin role, is the owner, who is able to maintain the team, who is able to modify resources in depth. And we have the members, which are basically the contributors who actually deliver code to our products, to our components, and so on. So at the moment, we do not have any product, so let us create one. Let's pick a fancy name. Let's see if this is already captured by anybody. Oh, no, foobar, surprise. So my name is already the responsible contact for that product, and after we have created that, we will get a so-called empty hull of a product. So it's empty, and we can start selecting first by setting up a runtime environment. And when setting up a runtime environment, we have at the moment 3 different hyperscalers we support: Google, Azure, and our own cloud Stackit. And the most commonly used runtime environment that we support at the moment is Kubernetes. We are also focusing in the future of also supporting serverless environments, as also Cloud Run within Stackit and so on. But at the moment, Kubernetes is the main runtime we need to support here. That's why we are basically working with that in most of our projects. So when we then select Kubernetes, we can set up our so-called infra level of the product. We are separating between infras and stages. Infras means these are the resources that will be created within the hyperscalers. So to say, in Google, you will get the Google product, the Google projects. In Azure, it's called an Azure subscription. Within Stackit, it's equally also a project. And when setting up the infra, we are separating within the infra between work and live environments, you can see here. So the work environment is for non-prod related things. Meanwhile, the live, of course, for production related stuff. And within the non-prod environment, we can differentiate between different types of stages. Everything's opinionated, so we can at least select between dev, test, and QA stage. When we select that, set it up, we have one final step. We need to then apply first, because this will then actually create costs on the hyperscaler side, because we have an empty Kubernetes cluster already set up. We have all the resources in place. In Azure, it's the web application firewall, front door, the VNets, and a whole lot of things. So this is all part of the 160 steps we are fully automating at the moment. And the developers afterwards can only focus on throwing in their components. And this is actually pretty cool, because honestly, who wants to taking care of setting up a Kubernetes cluster within the room here? Anybody? All developers, DevOps guys? No? Okay, good, only developers. And this is what we want to achieve. We want to take away the boring stuff, the infrastructural stuff, which a developer really do not have to take care of, away from them. We are taking care of that for you, so the developers can only focus on their work and their actual projects.
So maybe you can just show a real example. And
Yeah.
This would be maybe nice. I think GCP, our cloud enablement project would be maybe nice.
Exactly. I mean, after we have set up the runtime environment, one wants to actually set up his developer environment. The developer environment reads, we will take care also of setting up the relevant code repositories, the pipelining system, the artifact repository, the security scanning tool, the quality metrics tool. And for that, we are also pretty bound at the moment, because our internal tool for code repositories and pipelinings is Azure DevOps. Our central artifact repository is mainly Artifactory. Within here, you can select which type of artifact repositories you need upfront, but you can also change and extend that later. We are using Snyk for security scanning of our components, as also SonarQube for quality metrics. And mainly, that's it what you need upfront to set up your product initially. And because this could also take some minutes, which we currently do not have because time is running out, I'm going to show you one of our pre-prepared products. It's called the Cloud Academy. This is basically following a most common template, like most of our applications starting. You see, we already have the product up front. We have the runtime environment already configured. We have a live environment. We have the work environment. And within the environments, we already have within live a prod stage, and within non-prod only a dev stage, because we only need two stages, one for development purposes, and afterwards we transfer everything that's done in development directly into production. And then you can see here the component section. The components are basically the things that we as developers taking care of. This is the actual code. These are the services. These are the deployables. These things will end up in containers that we actually deliver in the selected runtime of the product, which means in this case, we also have a Kubernetes runtime. That means that every component will result in a Docker container, which will be then end up as a deployable in a pod in a Kubernetes cluster, which will be deployed every time, for example, a commit happens. We also have a strict branching model, which can be also adjusted and configured, which means one can decide which type of branch will be deployed to which environment. So the normal way to configure things is that we have a development branch where everything goes to the dev stage directly with each commit. And when something's merged to master, the master will directly be deployed to the production environment. And this is a normal base setup, how we work with that. And underneath, you can see the dependency management. This is one of the real gold nuggets within the ODJ, which I explain a minute later. There we can select between different types of services our components depend on. For example, databases, other APIs, other SaaS platforms, and so on and so forth. Underneath that, you have a statics and secrets section. This can be compared to Kubernetes config maps, the static objects, or the secrets, which will end up in secret objects within Kubernetes, where they can enter your secrets relevant for your components. And within the component, you can also use and reference to each dependency within your product, which means everything, every dependency will be injected automatically. The connections will be set up automatically. The whole secrets will be injected, and it just works magically. And when everything's up and running and in place, we can go, for example, into the UI component directly. There we can see some metadata for the component. There we also see the public endpoints when a component is supposed to be exposed. And then when we click on the endpoint link, we will get our actual Cloud Academy, which is backed by our API server and the metadata from the Postgres dependency instance of the product.
So maybe time is really short. One of the most important parts that we also want to achieve was certainly to do a cloud agnostic part here. So all this what you see there was Azure. Maybe you can first of all show, if it's okay, what this does mean in Azure to what we build up in Azure.
At the moment, it's pretty abstract. I mean, to show you it's really happening in Azure, what we set up for you, what we provide from the ODJ side, so you can only focus on your code and your active development, is a short resources list within the subscription that we are using for this Cloud Academy product. And there you can see under the resource list how many resources you actively have to set up initially. You need a Kubernetes cluster, the VNets, the firewalls, the Postgres underneath it, and everything else. And only with the dependency management that we maintain within the ODJ, we are able to set up an infrastructure plan and afterwards apply everything magically via Terraform or the Cloud SDKs directly to Azure, Google, and later on stack it.
Okay, then the next thing, cloud agnostic means switching the cloud. So from Azure to Google, or we are providing our own cloud, which is called StackIt, but in this case, let's switch the same thing and do the same thing for Google and set it up.
Exactly.
How did we do this?
One of the main goals of the ODJ is to stay hyperscaler agnostic, which means that this product should be easily migratable to any hyperscaler of choice that we actually support. And eat your own dog food style, we thought, okay, maybe now it's a good time to test that by ourselves, that this is also really working. And we try to migrate the whole Cloud Academy with a simple switch to Google. And when we go to the subscription level, we can see underneath the actual product list, and behind every product, you can see which hyperscaler the product uses. And here's this Cloud Academy GCP product, which is the exact copy of the Cloud Academy. So we just cloned. First we set up the product with the runtime environment for Google, Kubernetes setup, and so on. Then we cloned the repositories into the new product. We changed some configs, so backend URLs, some credentials, and within at max 2 hours, we were able to switch from Azure to Google transparently. We had an active dev test environment, a prod environment, and everything was working magically within hours. And it was not anymore a matter of days like previously.
Okay, maybe a last thing. You talk a lot about these dependencies. I think time is running up, but maybe a very short introduction. What does this mean with the dependencies? Yeah,
so that's the so-called real golden nuggets that I was talking about previously. That's our service catalog. And within the service catalog, we offer all ODJ-supported PaaS services. There you can see the supported hyperscalers, Google, Azure, StackIt. When we switch, for example, to GCP, you can see the actual PaaS services that we are supporting for Azure. So when a product needs a public bucket to store blob assets, they can simply select the dependency here. And as soon as the stage run happens within the ODJ, within the stage, there will be a special instance for this type of stage being set up for bucket usage. As soon as the components depends on that, all connection data, all relevant dependencies will be brought in place automatically. So the component can simply use this connection data, inject it by our system, and then just use it. And then they have the connectivity and the possibility to use buckets.
Okay, maybe you can just show how we can then connect each teams, because if I as a team provide an API, and someone else wants to use my API, all this hassle, getting all this API management stuff up and running, also there is a solution. Yeah.
For that purpose, we built an API management where each product can register its own API. So let's assume my product wants to expose, for example, this address API here, where I want to expose some address data, and some products want to simply use that type of API. They can then go into the service catalog, select the API as a dependency, and then they automatically get all credentials and all connectivity data brought in place, so they can simply use the API. And there you can also then see, when we go into this type of API, which product actually within the ODJ implements the type of service. And at the bottom, you can see which type of product actually depending on that type of API.
I think we now have to stop here. To be honest, time is up. The next thing that we can show, I think, is, first of all, you can go to our booth and ask your questions there, because we don't have the time to make the Q&A session now, right?
Yeah.
And then what you can do is certainly you can just go to LinkedIn and connect to us and ask your questions there if you don't get all your questions answered.
But it was
Yeah, I see it. I already have it.
but there is no more time.
Okay. So I think we're up at the end.
That's
so
it.
far. Time was really pressing. I mean, we have a whole lot of technical stuff to explain. I mean, a workshop would have fit better, I think, at the end, maybe next year. But yeah, if you have any questions, you can visit our booth for the Schwarz Group.
Yes, if you have any question, you can ask them at the booth, as you said, or maybe on the way out. Thank you all for this talk, and
Thank you.
we are going to have our last talk of the day in 5 minutes. Drink and stay hydrated.
Have you found your dream job as a developer? Or are you stuck in an unfulfilling job? On WeAreDevelopers.com, you find over 1,000 jobs in Europe that fit the tech stack that you want to work with, and salaries go up to $130K.